Apache woman in peril, Cowboy's unexpected rescue. The sun was beginning to sink low over the jagged cliffs of the Arizona desert, casting long, golden shadows that stretched across the rocky ground. The air was dry and still, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and dusty earth. Among these rugged rocks walked Ahioka, a young Apache woman who moved carefully, her eyes scanning the uneven terrain around her. Her steps were quiet but deliberate, mindful of every crack in the rocks and every loose stone that could betray her presence. She carried a small woven basket, filled with herbs she had gathered for her village. These herbs were not ordinary plants. They were precious remedies passed down through generations, used to heal wounds, treat fevers, and strengthen the heart. Ahioka's life had been simple, rooted in the traditions of her people, but the wilderness was never truly safe. Stories of bandits and outlaws had reached her village more than once, warning of men who roamed the deserts and canyons, taking what they wanted by force. Ahioka had always listened to these stories with a mixture of fear and curiosity, knowing she might one day face danger herself. And now, on this hot afternoon, something in the wind and the sudden movement of dust made her heart race with unease. She stopped behind a large boulder and crouched low, listening. The desert was alive with sound, distant birds calling, the soft whistle of the wind, and the faint crunch of small animals scurrying through dry brush. But beneath these familiar noises, there was something else, something unfamiliar and threatening. A low murmur of voices carried through the canyon, rough and gruff, interrupted by the occasional laughter of men who clearly did not belong here. Ahioka's pulse quickened. She knew immediately that these were not hunters or travelers. They were outlaws, searching for someone to take advantage of, and she realized with a cold shock that she was directly in their path. Her mind raced as she considered her options. The canyon walls rose steep and steep around her, narrow and jagged, leaving little room for escape. There was a path behind her, but it led deeper into the canyon, where the rocks became more treacherous. Ahead, the ground opened slightly, offering more space, but she had no way of knowing what dangers awaited there. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her shaking hands, and remembered what her mother had taught her. Keep your mind calm, move carefully, and trust the earth to guide you. The outlaws appeared over the ridge, their horses kicking up clouds of dust that drifted down into the canyon. They were 4 in number, each riding with an air of confidence and menace. Their eyes scanned the rocky paths, searching for any sign of movement. Their voices were loud and harsh, shouting to one another and laughing at some private joke, but the laughter did not reach Ahioka's ears in a friendly way. It was the sound of danger. Ahioka pressed herself against the boulder, her small frame trying to make her as invisible as possible. The basket of herbs pressed against her side, and she feared that even a single rustle could give her away. She thought about running, but the canyon walls were too steep, too uneven. Every instinct told her that she had to remain silent and still, waiting for the right moment. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Ahioka could hear the soft clopping of horse hooves against rocks, the low grunts of the men as they guided their mounts. The wind carried snippets of their conversation. "We should find something soon," one of them muttered. "This area's supposed to be rich," another replied. Ahioka's stomach twisted with fear. Rich. They were not speaking of herbs or water. They were speaking of people, of what they could take by force if they found anyone alone. She tried to steady her breathing, inhaling slowly through her nose and exhaling gently through her mouth. Her mind searched for a solution, for any small advantage that might help her survive. She noticed a narrow ledge just a few feet away, hidden partially by a fallen tree. It was risky, but if she could reach it, she might gain a slightly higher vantage point and possibly slip past the men unnoticed. She waited until the outlaws moved further down the path, their attention caught by something else, and then she sprang into action. Her feet barely made a sound on the rocky ground as she crawled toward the ledge, her body pressed low against the canyon wall. As she climbed, one of the outlaws paused, glancing toward the boulder where she had been hiding. A sudden panic gripped her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm, holding her breath and flattening herself against the rocks. The man's gaze lingered for a tense moment, and then, distracted by something ahead, he moved on. Ahioka exhaled quietly, allowing herself a moment of relief, but she knew she was not safe yet. Once she reached the ledge, she took a moment to survey her surroundings. The canyon stretched ahead, dry and rocky, with patches of desert plants clinging to life in the harsh environment. The path forward was narrow, but it offered a chance. If she moved carefully, she might escape the outlaws and find her way back to the safety of the village. Her hands were scratched from the rough rocks, her dress torn slightly on a thorny bush, but she paid no mind. Survival mattered more than appearance. Suddenly, a branch snapped somewhere nearby. Ahioka froze, her heart pounding. The outlaws had noticed something. She crouched lower, wishing she could disappear into the rocks themselves. One of the men began to move in her direction, scanning the area with sharp, wary eyes. The sound of his horse's hooves grew louder, echoing against the canyon walls. Ahioka's mind raced. She could not fight. She was too small, too alone, and far from anyone who might help. She could only rely on her speed, her wits, and the lessons of her people. Then in the distance she saw movement, not of the outlaws, but of someone else. A lone rider appeared over the ridge, moving quickly and confidently through the rough terrain. The horse was strong and sure-footed, and the rider sat tall, scanning the canyon with alert eyes. Ahioka's breath caught in her throat. Could this person help her, or was it just another threat? She had no time to question it. The man, or cowboy, as she realized he must be, was coming closer, and his presence might be her only chance of escape. For the first time, Ahioka felt a flicker of hope. She had no idea who this stranger was, but he moved with skill and purpose. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever might come next. The outlaws were closing in, their voices louder now, their horses' hooves echoing ominously. She knew that if she did not act quickly, she could be trapped. With a burst of courage, Ahioka gathered herself and prepared to make a run for it, hoping to reach the hidden path she had spotted earlier. Every step was careful, every movement deliberate, as she tried to stay as quiet as possible. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to focus, to keep her eyes on the path ahead. The canyon seemed to close in around her, the rocks looming like silent sentinels, the sun casting harsh shadows that made the terrain even more treacherous. Yet she moved forward, driven by the simple and powerful desire to survive. Each step brought her closer to the unknown, but also closer to the possibility of safety. And then, she heard the voice of the lone rider, calling out sharply. The tone was commanding but not cruel, and it cut through the noise of the canyon like a beacon. The outlaws reacted instantly, turning their attention toward the newcomer. Ahioka saw her chance. With careful, quick movements, she edged toward the path that could lead her away from danger, hoping that this unexpected arrival would be enough to give her a chance to escape. Every moment felt stretched, as if the world itself had slowed down. The sun dipped lower, casting an orange glow over the canyon, and Ahioka moved with every ounce of strength and focus she had. Her mind replayed the lessons her mother had taught her, the stories of bravery and survival passed down through generations. She felt the presence of her ancestors in her steps, guiding her, giving her courage she did not know she possessed. The outlaws shouted in frustration as they saw the rider approaching, and Ahioka realized that the balance of power was shifting. She did not yet know the outcome, but she felt a growing certainty that she had not been abandoned, that help had arrived just in time. The desert, harsh and unforgiving, had tested her, but she was ready to face whatever came next. Ahioka's journey through the canyon was far from over, but in that moment, amidst fear and uncertainty, she felt a spark of hope. The stranger on the horse was near. The outlaws were distracted, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she allowed herself to believe that she might survive this peril. The lone rider was moving fast, his horse's hooves striking the hard earth with a rhythmic thunder that echoed through the canyon. Jack Callahan, the cowboy, had been riding across the Arizona desert for hours, his sharp eyes scanning the terrain for any signs of trouble. He was a man who had spent most of his life on the frontier, riding through the harsh wilderness, facing dangers that most people could not even imagine. Jack knew the desert like the back of his hand, every ridge, every path, every hidden nook where danger might be waiting. He had heard rumors that a small group of outlaws had been moving through the canyon, threatening anyone who crossed their path. Jack didn't seek out trouble, but he had a quiet sense of duty, a belief that when someone was in danger, a man had to act. As he rode, he noticed movement below him, a small figure pressed against a rock, nearly invisible in the shadows. Jack slowed his horse slightly, squinting in the fading light. It didn't take long for him to understand what he was seeing. A young woman, alone and clearly frightened, was trying to hide from the men chasing her. Her movements were careful but tense, every step revealing her fear. Jack felt a surge of determination. He had faced desperate situations before, but the sight of someone in such immediate peril always made his heart tighten. He knew he had to help her. The outlaws were not far behind, riding with reckless abandon, shouting and laughing at the thrill of the chase. Their horses kicked up clouds of dust, and their voices rang harshly against the canyon walls. Jack could see the danger was real, and that the young woman's life was in immediate threat. He adjusted his grip on the reins and spurred his horse forward, moving with precision and speed that only years of experience could provide. As he approached, he shouted loudly, his voice carrying across the canyon. The words themselves were not meant to frighten her. They were meant to startle the outlaws and draw their attention away from the woman. "Hey, over here," he called, firing a warning shot into the air. The gunshot echoed, sharp and loud, and the outlaws reacted immediately, pulling their horses to a halt for just a moment. That moment was all Jack needed. The young woman froze, unsure of what to do. Her heart was still pounding, her breath short and fast, and now a new figure had appeared in the canyon, someone who might save her or might be another threat. Jack's voice carried again, steady and commanding but not cruel. "Run toward me, quickly," he shouted. She hesitated for just a second, then something in his tone gave her courage. She could see the strength in the way he rode, the calmness in his eyes, and she realized that this stranger was there to help. With a sudden burst of energy, she moved, her small frame weaving carefully through the rocks and dust, heading straight toward Jack. The outlaws shouted, realizing what was happening, and their horses lunged forward again. Bullets cracked through the air, though Jack's presence had made them more cautious, forcing them to divide their attention. Every second counted, and Ahioka felt her adrenaline surge as she ran, every step guided by instinct and the hope of survival. Jack leaned low over his horse, guiding it with expert precision as he moved closer to her. The canyon was dangerous. Rocks jutted out at odd angles, narrow ledges lined with loose stones, and thorny bushes threatened to scratch or trip them. But Jack's skill was unmatched. He rode with confidence, predicting each movement and ensuring that the young woman could reach him safely. When she finally got close enough, he held out a steady hand, helping her onto his horse. The sudden motion of mounting the horse made her heart leap, but Jack's calm presence steadied her. She gripped the saddle tightly, trying to keep her balance as the horse began to move. Jack guided the animal carefully through the rocky terrain, moving in a path that the outlaws could not follow easily. The horses of the bandits were fast, but the narrow canyon limited their advantage. Jack used every trick he knew, switching directions, weaving between rocks, and using the natural cover of the cliffs to protect them both. Ahioka could barely speak, her throat dry and her mind racing. She clung to Jack, trusting him completely, though she had only just met him. She had been terrified moments ago, but now she felt a strange sense of hope. Jack's presence was calm and reassuring, and his skill made her realize that she might actually escape this danger alive. The outlaws were growing more desperate. They shouted threats, spurred their horses faster, and tried to catch up, but the canyon was working against them. Every turn Jack took, every rocky obstacle he used as cover, forced the bandits to slow down, giving them precious moments to gain distance. Ahioka could hear their frustration, and it strengthened her resolve. She had survived so far, and now she had someone fighting by her side. The ride was not easy. The canyon was filled with sudden drops, loose stones, and jagged rocks that could easily unseat even the most skilled rider. Jack's horse slipped once on a steep incline, sending a jolt through both of them. Ahioka instinctively leaned into Jack, trusting him completely as he corrected the horse's balance. Every second felt like an eternity, and the sounds of the pursuit echoed in the canyon, sharp and frightening. At one point, a branch snapped under the weight of one of the outlaws' horses, and bullets whizzed dangerously close to Jack and Ahioka. She pressed herself against him, her heart pounding, and he kept his horse steady, maneuvering with incredible skill. He glanced at her, giving her a reassuring nod, though his focus never wavered from the path ahead. Ahioka realized then that courage did not always mean shouting or fighting. It could also mean steady hands, calm eyes, and quiet determination in the face of fear. As they moved, Jack's knowledge of the land became clear. He guided the horse through hidden paths, narrow ledges, and small crevices in the canyon walls, places where the outlaws could not easily follow. Ahioka began to notice small signs along the way, marks on trees, patterns in the rocks, that suggested Jack had ridden here before. He knew where to go, how to move, and when to slow down or speed up. Every decision he made was calculated, and every step brought them closer to safety. Despite the danger, Ahioka's mind began to clear. She realized that she was not alone, that someone had risked their own safety to save her. She thought of her village, of her family, and of the lessons her mother had taught her. She realized that survival was not just about avoiding danger. It was also about trusting others when they proved themselves worthy. And in this moment, she trusted Jack completely. The outlaws were still behind them, but their shouts were growing fainter. The canyon's twists and turns, combined with Jack's skill, had started to give them an advantage. Ahioka felt a mixture of relief and continued fear. She knew that the danger was not over, that the canyon could still claim them if they were not careful. But she also knew that they had a chance, a real chance, to survive. Hours seemed to pass as they moved through the rugged landscape. The sun dipped lower, casting deep shadows that made the canyon look even more treacherous. Ahioka's legs were stiff, her hands sore from gripping the saddle, but her determination never wavered. Jack spoke little, but every word was purposeful. He guided her through difficult terrain, keeping them both safe, and every time the horse stumbled or a rock shifted, he corrected it with calm authority. Through it all, Ahioka began to notice the quiet bravery of the cowboy. He was not loud or boastful. He did not seek recognition. He acted because it was right, because he saw someone in need, and because he knew that courage meant action, not words. She felt a growing respect for him and an understanding that heroism could take many forms, sometimes loud and obvious, sometimes quiet and steadfast. As the light faded, they approached a small creek, hidden among the rocks and trees. Jack slowed the horse and carefully guided it into the shallow water. The creek was a small oasis, offering temporary cover and a chance to regain their strength. Ahioka dismounted with his help, her legs shaky but steady. She looked at him with gratitude, words failing her, but the intensity of her relief and appreciation was clear in her eyes. Jack nodded, acknowledging her thanks with a quiet smile. They had survived the immediate danger, but he knew the journey was not yet over. The canyon was full of hidden paths and unexpected obstacles, and the outlaws could still be nearby. Yet for the first time, Ahioka felt hope, real hope. The terrifying chase that had begun in the harsh sunlight of the desert was slowly turning into a story of survival, courage, and the unexpected kindness of a stranger. In the quiet of that hidden creek, amidst the fading light and the sounds of water trickling over rocks, Ahioka felt a sense of calm. She had been in mortal danger, and she had faced fear like never before. But she had also discovered something powerful, that even in the wild, untamed desert, people could act with courage, compassion, and skill. And in this moment, as she prepared to continue her escape with Jack by her side, she realized that she was not just surviving, she was learning what it truly meant to trust, to hope, and to live. The creek provided a brief moment of relief for both Ahioka and Jack. The water was cool against the harsh heat of the desert sun, and the soft murmur of the flowing stream offered a calm contrast to the chaos they had just fled. Ahioka leaned over the water, cupping her hands to drink, and let out a quiet sigh. Her chest was still tight from fear, and her heart thumped wildly, but the simple act of drinking from the creek made her feel alive in a way she had not since the outlaws had first appeared. Jack watched her with quiet vigilance, keeping an eye on the surrounding canyon walls. Though the immediate danger seemed to have lessened, he knew better than to let his guard down. Outlaws like the ones pursuing Ahioka were clever and ruthless, often waiting to ambush those they had lost track of. He knew that the desert had many hidden dangers, narrow paths, loose rocks, and sudden drops that could prove deadly if they were not careful. Jack's years on the frontier had taught him to respect the land and anticipate trouble before it arrived. After Ahioka had regained some strength, Jack helped her back onto his horse. The creek was shallow, but the rocks beneath were slippery. One misstep could have sent them both tumbling. Jack moved with steady confidence, guiding the horse through the water and keeping its hooves from slipping. Ahioka clutched him tightly, her fear mingled with awe. She had survived so far through courage and quick thinking, but now she realized how important it was to have someone with experience and skill by her side. The canyon ahead grew narrower and more treacherous. Jagged rocks jutted out at odd angles, loose stones littered the paths, and sudden drops appeared without warning. Jack guided the horse carefully, moving at a pace that balanced speed with safety. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. Ahioka felt the tension in the air, knowing that one wrong step could be disastrous. Yet she trusted Jack completely, letting go of the fear that had paralyzed her earlier and focusing on the path forward. The outlaws were not far behind. Their shouts echoed off the canyon walls, and the sound of horse hooves against stone grew louder with each passing moment. They were angry, frustrated by the sudden appearance of the cowboy who had disrupted their pursuit. Jack knew that they were reckless and dangerous, but he also knew that their desperation made them predictable. He adjusted his route, using the canyon's natural obstacles to slow the outlaws and protect both himself and Ahioka. At one particularly narrow stretch, a sharp drop appeared to their left. Loose stones threatened to give way under the horse's weight. Jack leaned forward, whispering instructions to the animal, guiding it step by careful step. Ahioka's hands gripped the saddle tightly, her knuckles white, and she felt the ground shift beneath them. A single misstep could send them tumbling into the canyon below. Her fear surged, but she reminded herself that Jack's skill had brought them this far and that she must trust him completely. Suddenly, a loose rock tumbled down the cliffside, striking another rock with a loud clatter. The sound made Ahioka gasp and the horse startle. Jack's quick reflexes steadied the animal, and with gentle but firm guidance, he kept them moving forward. The outlaws, seeing the danger, slowed their own horses and shouted in frustration. Jack used this moment to gain precious distance, steering the horse through a hidden path that the outlaws would find difficult to follow. The sun was beginning to set, painting the canyon in shades of orange and red. Shadows stretched across the rocky terrain, making the path ahead even more difficult to navigate. Jack's experience became even more valuable now, as he used the fading light to his advantage, moving through areas where the outlaws could not easily see. Ahioka clung to him, her fear now tempered by growing respect and trust. She realized that courage was not only about facing danger, but also about having the wisdom to survive it. Hours passed as they maneuvered through the canyon, and Ahioka began to notice small details she had not seen before. The canyon was alive with hidden beauty, delicate wildflowers growing between rocks, the soft murmur of distant water, and the quiet movements of desert animals. For a moment, she allowed herself to appreciate the world around her, even in the midst of danger. She realized that the desert was not just harsh and unforgiving, it was also full of life, strength, and resilience. Jack spoke little, but when he did, his words were calm and reassuring. "Stay close," he said quietly. "Keep your eyes open. We'll make it through." His tone was steady, giving Ahioka a sense of security she had not felt since the chase began. She nodded, understanding that survival depended on both courage and focus. Together, they moved through the rocky terrain, each step bringing them closer to safety. At one point, the canyon opened slightly, revealing a small plateau with sparse trees and shrubs. Jack guided the horse carefully across this open area, using the trees for cover and keeping a watchful eye on the path behind them. Ahioka felt a brief surge of hope. The open space allowed them to see the outlaws positioned more clearly, and she realized that their careful planning and skill had given them an advantage. She whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, grateful for the cowboy who had come to her aid. But the danger was far from over. The outlaws were skilled horsemen and not easily deterred. They had regrouped and were now attempting to follow through a less obvious path. Jack noticed the subtle changes in the landscape, the disturbed rocks, the faint tracks of the outlaws' horses, and adjusted his route once again. He led Ahioka through a narrow passage between two cliffs, barely wide enough for the horse, where the bandits could not follow. Every step was tense, and Ahioka's heart raced with anticipation and fear. As darkness began to fall, the canyon became even more treacherous. Shadows merged with the rocky terrain, creating illusions and making it difficult to judge distances. Jack slowed the horse, guiding it carefully through each obstacle. Ahioka's senses were heightened. She felt every movement, every shift in the horse's balance, and every sound of the canyon around them. Despite her exhaustion, she remained alert, knowing that their lives depended on every moment of focus. The night brought its own challenges. The temperature dropped rapidly, and a cold wind swept through the canyon, carrying the scent of dust and distant sagebrush. Jack kept moving steadily, using the terrain to his advantage and keeping Ahioka close. They reached a small cluster of trees where the horse could rest briefly, and Jack dismounted, helping Ahioka down as well. She stretched her tired legs, grateful for the moment of respite, but she knew they could not linger. The outlaws would not give up easily, and the canyon offered few places to hide for long. Jack examined the horse and the surrounding area, making sure they were safe before continuing. "We'll move again soon," he said quietly, "but we have to be careful. The night can hide more than just shadows." Ahioka nodded, understanding the importance of caution. She had faced fear before, but now she was learning about patience, strategy, and the careful planning required to survive the wilderness. They continued their journey, moving through narrow paths, rocky ledges, and hidden crevices in the canyon. Each step was deliberate, each movement calculated. Ahioka's confidence grew with each obstacle they overcame. She realized that fear could be transformed into strength when guided by skill and determination. Jack's steady presence gave her courage, and together they navigated the dangerous terrain, avoiding hidden pitfalls and staying ahead of the pursuing outlaws. Hours turned into what felt like an eternity, but gradually, the canyon began to open into a wider valley. The rocky walls became less steep, and the terrain was dotted with small trees, shrubs, and patches of grass. Jack guided the horse carefully, knowing that the open space could be both a blessing and a danger. It offered freedom of movement but also left them exposed. Ahioka's heart lifted slightly as she saw the change in the landscape. She realized that the worst of the canyon might be behind them, but she also knew they had to remain vigilant. Finally, after what felt like an endless journey, they reached a hidden grove tucked away behind a line of rocks and trees. The grove offered shelter, cover, and a moment of safety. Jack dismounted and helped Ahioka down, allowing the horse to rest. She breathed deeply, feeling a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and gratitude. They had survived the perilous canyon together, and in the process, she had discovered a strength within herself she had never known. Jack looked at her quietly, nodding in acknowledgement of her courage. "You did well," he said simply. "We made it through, but we still have a journey ahead. Stay close, and we'll find a safe place soon." Ahioka nodded, understanding that their survival depended on continued vigilance. She felt a deep sense of respect for the cowboy who had risked everything to save her, and she realized that trust, courage, and determination were as important as skill in the wilderness. As the night settled over the valley, Ahioka and Jack remained alert, listening to the sounds of the desert around them. The rustle of small animals, the distant cry of birds, and the whispering wind through the trees. They had escaped immediate danger, but the memory of the outlaws' pursuit lingered, reminding them that survival required constant attention. Ahioka felt a new sense of determination. She would not allow fear to dominate her, and with Jack's guidance, she knew they could face whatever challenges remained. The moon rose high, casting a soft silver light over the grove, illuminating the path ahead. Ahioka and Jack prepared for the next stage of their journey, knowing that safety was not yet guaranteed. But in that moment, amidst the quiet beauty of the desert night, they felt a small sense of triumph. They had survived the canyon, escaped the outlaws, and proven that courage, skill, and trust could overcome even the most dangerous circumstances. The first light of dawn began to filter over the distant mountains, painting the valley in soft shades of gold and pink. The night had been long and tense, filled with the quiet sounds of the desert, the distant call of a coyote, the rustling of leaves in the gentle wind, and the soft movement of Jack's horse as he guided Ahioka through the hidden paths of the valley. Though they had survived the treacherous canyon, both of them were aware that danger was never far in the wild desert, and that their journey was not yet finished. Jack led Ahioka carefully along a narrow path, hidden from the main routes, where outlaws would be unlikely to search. The valley widened slowly, revealing patches of greenery and small clusters of trees. The air was fresher here, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers mixed with the earthy aroma of the desert soil. Ahioka's legs were stiff, her hands sore from gripping the saddle for hours, but her spirit was lifted. She felt a growing sense of hope, tempered by the awareness that caution was still necessary. For the first time, she allowed herself to glance around and appreciate the beauty of the land. The valley was alive with subtle movements, small lizards darting among rocks, birds fluttering between branches, and the soft ripple of a hidden stream nearby. In the midst of danger, the desert revealed its quiet strength and resilience, reminding her that life could thrive even in harsh conditions. Ahioka's fear began to shift into determination. She realized that surviving was not only about escaping danger, it was about learning to move with the land, respecting its rhythms, and trusting those who guided her. Jack noticed her growing calm and gave her a small, encouraging nod. Though he spoke little, his actions had communicated more than words ever could. He had risked his life for her, demonstrating courage, skill, and compassion. Ahioka felt a deep sense of gratitude and admiration for the cowboy who had appeared so suddenly, changing the course of her life in an instant. As they moved forward, Jack kept a sharp eye on the valley. He knew that outlaws could be unpredictable and might attempt to ambush them in more open areas. The terrain was easier here, but the open spaces carried their own risks. Jack guided the horse carefully, moving from tree to tree, using natural cover and keeping them both safe. Ahioka clung to him, her trust in him absolute. She felt the rhythm of the horse's movements beneath her, and with each step, her fear began to give way to a growing confidence in their ability to survive. Hours passed, and the valley began to show signs of life. Small clusters of Apache dwellings appeared in the distance, partially hidden among the trees and rocks. The sight filled Ahioka with relief and longing. She had been alone in the wilderness, facing danger she had never imagined, but now the possibility of returning to the safety of her village was within reach. Her heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude, excitement, and cautious anticipation. Jack noticed the change in her demeanor and slowed the horse slightly, guiding her safely along the final stretch. "Almost there," he said quietly. "Keep your eyes open, but don't be afraid. You're safe now." His calm voice reassured her. She nodded, holding onto him tightly, as if drawing strength from his presence. She realized that true courage was not just about facing fear. It was also about trusting others when they proved themselves worthy. As they approached the village, Ahioka saw familiar faces emerging from the small homes and huts. Her family and neighbors had already heard the story of the danger in the canyon, and many had gathered at the edge of the village to see if she had returned safely. Their expressions were a mixture of relief, concern, and awe as they saw her riding toward them, accompanied by the cowboy who had saved her. Her mother ran forward, tears streaming down her face, and embraced Ahioka tightly. "You're safe," she exclaimed, her voice filled with emotion. "We feared the worst." Ahioka hugged her mother back, feeling the warmth of her family after the long, harrowing night. She looked at Jack, who had guided her through the wilderness with unmatched skill, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. Without him, she might not have survived. The villagers surrounded them, offering words of thanks, praise, and curiosity. Jack dismounted, keeping a respectful distance, allowing Ahioka to reunite fully with her family. Though many eyes were on him, he remained humble, his focus on ensuring that she was safe. Ahioka's father approached him, extending a hand in gratitude. "You saved her life," he said simply. "We cannot thank you enough." Jack nodded, a quiet smile on his face. "I only did what anyone should do," he replied. "She was in danger and I helped her. That's all that matters." Ahioka's mind replayed the events of the previous day, the outlaws, the narrow escapes, the tense moments in the canyon, and Jack's unwavering skill and courage. She realized that the experience had changed her. She had faced fear beyond anything she had imagined, but she had also discovered a strength within herself that she had not known existed. And she had discovered the power of trust, courage, and the kindness of a stranger who had risked his life for hers. The villagers offered Jack a simple meal as a token of gratitude, and he accepted quietly, sitting beside Ahioka and her family. They shared food and water, and she finally had a moment to rest and collect her thoughts. The events of the night and the journey through the canyon weighed heavily on her, but she felt a deep sense of relief. She was safe, and she was surrounded by people who cared for her. As the morning progressed, the story of the rescue spread throughout the village. People marveled at Jack's bravery and the skill with which he had navigated the treacherous canyon. They spoke of the narrow paths, the dangerous drops, and the skillful maneuvers that had kept both him and Ahioka alive. Though Jack never sought recognition, the villagers admired him greatly, seeing in his actions the qualities they valued most: courage, honor, and compassion. Ahioka spent the day resting, but her mind was active, replaying the events and thinking about the lessons she had learned. She realized that danger could appear at any moment, that life was fragile, and that trust and courage were essential for survival. She also understood the value of community, of family, and of the unexpected allies who could appear when needed most. Jack had been one such ally, and she would never forget the role he had played in her survival. By the afternoon, the village had returned to its usual rhythm. Children played near the edge of the creek, elders tended to small gardens, and women prepared food and cared for the young. The events of the night were still present in everyone's minds, but life continued. Ahioka felt a sense of belonging and safety that had been absent during the chaos of the canyon. She knew that the memories of fear would remain, but so too would the memories of courage, survival, and unexpected kindness. Jack prepared to leave, knowing that his own journey through the desert must continue. Ahioka's family insisted that he stay, offering food, water, and a place to rest, but he politely declined. "I have more paths to travel," he explained, "but you are safe now. That is enough for me." Ahioka walked with him to the edge of the village, her heart heavy with gratitude and admiration. She wanted to thank him fully, to express the depth of her appreciation, but words seemed insufficient. Before he left, Ahioka spoke softly, her voice filled with emotion. "I will never forget what you did for me," she said. "You saved my life and you gave me hope when I had none." Jack nodded, a small smile on his face. "Stay strong," he replied. "Trust your courage, and remember that fear can be overcome when you act with wisdom and heart." With that, he mounted his horse and rode off, disappearing into the distant hills, leaving Ahioka with a renewed sense of life and strength. As she watched him go, Ahioka realized that the events of the past hours had changed her forever. She had faced death, danger, and fear, but she had also discovered resilience, courage, and the importance of trust. She returned to her family, carrying not only the herbs she had gathered, but also the knowledge that even in the most dangerous and unexpected situations, help could arrive and courage could prevail. The village celebrated her safe return, but Ahioka knew that the true story was not only of danger and escape, but also of the quiet heroism of the cowboy who had appeared at the right moment. His actions had saved her life, and in doing so, he had shown her the power of courage, skill, and compassion. She felt a deep sense of respect and gratitude that would stay with her forever. As the sun set over the valley, casting long shadows across the village, Ahioka reflected on the journey. She had survived the perilous canyon, faced danger, and discovered the strength within herself and in the kindness of others. She understood that life was unpredictable, that fear was a constant companion, but that courage, trust, and compassion could overcome even the greatest challenges. That evening, as the village settled into quiet routines, Ahioka shared her story with the elders, her friends, and her family. She spoke not only of the fear she had faced, but also of the lessons she had learned, the importance of staying calm, thinking clearly, and trusting those who act with honor. She told them of Jack Callahan, the cowboy who had risked everything for a stranger, and how his actions had saved her life. Though he had left the village, Jack's presence remained in her thoughts. She knew that he was a symbol of courage and kindness, and she felt inspired to carry those lessons with her in everything she did. The danger of the canyon was behind her, but its lessons would remain forever, shaping her into a woman who understood the true meaning of bravery, trust, and survival.